Hello, pop stars, and welcome to this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy.
Thank you for joining us. And this week's episode is sponsored by us here at the Popcorn Wind Down, and we're telling you all to get out and vote next month's midterm elections, or we're all going to be very, very worried. Are you excited for midterms, Tammy?
No, but who's excited about any election? You just go out and do it.
I get excited. I like voting. Is the nerd in me coming out?
Yes, very much so. But it's okay. We're used to it by now.
I'm actually one of those. I do like voting. I like. I don't know. I guess that's just the political junkie in me as well. But it's a great sponsorship because this week's movie was a doozy. We're going all in on "Don't Worry, Darling," starring Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, and Olivia Wilde, who also directed the film, which takes us back to the 1950s and the town of Victory, a desert utopia where all the husbands work for a company on a top secret project while all the wives just live their best life, catering to their husband's every need. However, things begin to go awry when Alice begins to upset the balance when she begins to suspect that things in Victory may be more dystopian than anyone realizes. So, Tammy, what did you think of Don't Worry, Darling? Was it a utopian paradise or a dystopian nightmare?
Um, I'm gonna start off by saying that I was watching it, and what I realized was it is a dark version of Stepford Wives. Have you seen Stepford Wives?
Not in a long, long time. Like the Nicole Kidman's in that,
Yeah, the
right?
Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman and Bette Midler movie, which was kind of like a comedy. It was like a comedy slash drama, but more funny than anything. And with this, like I'm watching it, and as you slowly start to realize where the movie is taking you, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is like Stepford Wives, but like really dark. Like really, really dark. It definitely surprised me. It surprised me on how much I enjoyed it. I was just gonna go see it because, of course, no publicity is bad publicity. But to kind of see like how Harry Styles is progressing in his acting career as well, and Florence Pugh is just absolutely amazing for a young actress, and pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it. I really did. What about you?
I thought it was interesting. I wanted to see it even before all the controversy. I thought Olivia Wilde um, did a good job in Booksmart, excuse me, her first her directorial debut. I'm just letting y'all know I'm tongue tied already today, so it's going to be a doozy getting through this, but I will do my best. And like you said, Harry Styles, interested to see how his acting career is progressing. And then Chris Pine and Florence Pugh is one of those actresses to watch where she kind of just takes a role and she can embody it. She makes it her own. You forget the last role that she was in because she's just so good at being present in whatever role she takes on. So and that's pretty rare for actors and actresses where they just make me forget everything else and I'm just right there with them in that moment. So um it was I yeah, it was an interesting premise. And I agree with you. When I first started watching, I'm like, yeah, this is some dark Stepford wife shit. Um, and I kind of knew from the beginning that there was something sinister going on, but I didn't expect it to be that fucking bad. Like it was bad. Like there's bad, and then there's what the fuck. And so like I thought that okay, the town was suspicious. I thought it was actually in the 50s or 60s. That part I got, right? And I said, okay, what did they do? Because of where they are, I'm like, okay, they built this little crazy community in the middle of the desert because it's remote. I get that, right? And I thought maybe that the husbands had given their wives something like when she suspected it was in the food, or I thought maybe it was in the drinks, or there was something that they were putting that they were giving the wives to make them so complicit, or so compliant, excuse me, compliant. And um I was just like, okay, but I wasn't expecting that. But what did you think before you got to the twist? Like, just the setup of it, was did it creep you out any, or were you just like, well, this is the way that they wanted us to believe that it was?
I just went along for the ride. I didn't really like try to think a deeper thought. Like I really didn't. Like I was just like, okay, so they're in the 1950s. They're in this quaint little town in the middle of nowhere. Um, I didn't start suspecting until Alice started pointing out certain things, and I was just like, and I thought the same thing that you did. I was just like, is it in the drinks? Because they were drinking all the time. So I'm just like, it's got to be in the liquor. Like something has got to be in the liquor because the women are always drinking. So it was like trying to figure out like, especially when, oh my god, I forgot what her name was, the black wife.
Margaret, I think.
Yeah, Margaret. So when she kind of like came in and she was just like zoned out and she was just, talking, and you kind of think like, oh, she's talking in gibberish, but that's when like I was really like, okay, so this is all fucked up. Like something about to go down. And that's when I paid attention even more. Now before it was kind of like things are like weird, but I kind of chalked it up to like my feminist mindset on I just would not enjoy that. Like that looks like a boring life to live on all you're doing is cooking and cleaning and waiting with a drink in your hand for when your husband comes home. Like just not my cup of tea. But I know that. So I was just like, oh, okay, like it's got to be something more. But I thought also that they were like making like illegal weapons or something like that for the government or something to that effect. So I was thinking along like a more, I guess, realistic mindset than what it ended up being. Then I was just like, my mind was blown a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like when I said sinister, I had no idea it was taking us where it took us, and we'll get to that in a minute. I'm with you. I thought, okay, they have them in the middle of the desert during the 1950s, 60s, cold height of the Cold War. I'm with you. It was one of those towns built around the underground bunkers in Vegas or California or somewhere, and they were out there testing, especially when they had those little earthquakes, I guess we'll call them.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. And they were like, well, what's going on? Like, what are you testing? It's like, I can't tell you that. So that's what I was thinking. And I was thinking that, okay, it is something in the drinks and the food, because when she started cracking that egg and there was nothing there, I was like, and she went through and she just cracked all those eggs and they were empty. And
Hmm.
I'm like, and I'm like, okay, what the fuck is she on? So my initial question to you is, I think it all started to go bad for Alice is when they went on that midnight drive in the desert, when they went doing those crazy eights when they were drunk, and he took her out to the desert.
I remember that, but that was kind of early on in the movie.
Yeah, and I think, but they weren't supposed to go out to the desert.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
they weren't supposed to be in the women. They weren't supposed to go past the town. They weren't supposed to go out to the desert, and they damn sure weren't ever supposed to go to headquarters. Because when they were talking, they said that's when it went bad for Margaret too, is when she went to the desert and her son just disappeared.
Right.
So I think he wasn't thinking because they were drunk. And when he took her out to the desert, I think that's when it started. That's when it started, because she started acting. It was bit by bit where she started acting or becoming suspicious, or she started acting where the cracks started to appear is after that night in the desert.
But I also feel like because I kind of got the idea when she had to be reprogrammed, I kind of got the idea that that wasn't the first time that they reprogrammed her.
I did
Um,
too.
yeah, like they've done it before. Like she, because I felt like it. you started to see it when you realized how strong-minded Alice was compared to the other wives, that she was very, very strong-minded. And so when they went and they reprogrammed her, I was just like, that wasn't the first time that they reprogrammed her. Like, they had to have done it before, so they already knew, they already saw the signs of what was coming. And him trying to like stop them, like just stop from her having to be reprogrammed again, trying to do everything that he could, which is like a twisted way of loving somebody, but okay. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, but I kind of got that mindset that once she was reprogrammed the first time, whenever that was, it was a quicker process on her breaking down the system over and over again. And you don't necessarily know like how many times she had been reprogrammed, fighting, fighting that system. So that is what I felt it was. I felt it was that once again, her brain was just going through the process of realizing that this was all off and that this was not real, or that this was fake in some way, shape, or form, and was starting to question. And I feel like she'd done that before. And the more you reprogram them, the easier it is for them to break it down and for you to have to do it again. That was the mindset that I got on. It was just a natural process of her mind just breaking it down once again because she was so strong-minded.
Yeah, and I got that feeling too. And what kind of confirmed it for me is when you go back and kind of replay the conversations, why Chris Pine's character, who is also amazing in this, the people who were saying that the strongest parts of the movie were Chris Pine and Florence Pugh, they definitely were not exaggerating on that. But I kind of got that idea, that same idea, when you go back and you think about how fascinated he was with her. How he was like, like it was almost an obsession. Like, what made her so different? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like her and even Margaret, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but Margaret, it seemed like that even if they had to be reprogrammed, then it would usually just be once and it would take and it would be fine. Or, the programming took for, so I'm the reprogramming I don't think was necessarily an anomaly, but it seems like that they would never have to reprogram someone as much as as they had to reprogram her, or as many times as they had to reprogram her. And also Margaret was an interesting case too, because Kiki Lane, the actress who plays Margaret, said that they cut out a lot of their scenes. And I think just from the aspect of things being more sinister,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think keeping in some of those scenes would have done the movie a better service, just so you can make the connection a little bit more, because it's like now I'm curious as to, okay, so what happened with Margaret to where it didn't take with her either, where it stopped taking with her, you know, the strong mindedness. So, but yeah, I got the idea that that wasn't her first time either. So, I have a question. Did Gemma Chan, as Frank's wife, did she know the truth? I'm thinking she did.
Oh no, she was involved. Come on, based on the ending, she was
She was
involved.
involved.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
she was involved from the jump. It's kind of like, and once again, I'm gonna go back to the Stepford Wives, right? When you realize that the concept of the Stepford Wives, right, of having this town where they reprogrammed all the wives, was the original concept of the Glenn Close character. And I got that same feeling. Like, I got the feeling that Chris Pine's character, he was the face of the program, but I feel
But it
like Gemma's character
was the
was,
brains.
yeah, was the brains of the program. Or, Chris Pine had the charisma to really sell this 1950s, and also he was the man, so you can sell this concept of the 1950s and how wives should be and everything like that. And Gemma, she was the brains of it, making sure that it went through, because at the end, when she realized that it had fallen apart, she was just like, oh, now it's my turn. So I wouldn't be surprised if she recreates the world, but it's not 1950s, but it's a world where, when women were getting more rights and more power in society, and reinventing that if she wants. at some point. Although I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
because what came to my mind as well is, does this play into the concept that men are more weak-minded when it comes to these certain things? Because I feel like when it was Stepford Wives, the men felt like they were losing their power as men, right? So then they had to program their wives in order to be these housewives so they could go back to when they were the man of the house, right? And they didn't have such success. And I feel like this same concept was in play when you saw Jack listening to the video, the podcast, whatever we want to call it, and you hear what Chris Pine's character was saying, and I got that same feeling, like they were playing on a lot of their insecurities. Because my question is, do you think that men's insecurities come more to the surface the more women gain more rights in society?
I have two names to say. One, Andrew Tate and Kevin Samuels, the late Kevin Samuels. That's who the Chris Pine character reminded me of, especially when you got the
Yes.
glimpses of the real world. And the incel behavior that they um, capitalize off of, that they encourage. And to answer your question, yes, men, a lot of men, most men are insecure about the woman being more successful than they are, about making more money than they do. Um, and we still live in a very patriarchal society. And that's why I said at the beginning, vote, because if it just brought back so much of to this is how a lot of men, especially with a lot of decisions that are being made and where one party is headed towards in politics, and you see their platform and you see their agenda and you see the things that they're voting for. They want to take us back to the 1950s when it comes to race relations, gender relations, all of that stuff. They want to push us that far back. So that was the scary aspect of me, is to like, this is what they want to go back to. Women, and they have this idealized fantasy that every woman in the 1950s and 60s just lived to serve her husband. Like women's rights just became this thing during
Recently.
this, yeah, like during the 60s or 70s. Like gay people just all of a sudden popped up in 1990 or something. And I'm like, are y'all fucking retarded? Like, sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry I used the R word, forgive me. But in that aspect, that is what I'm meaning, like, yeah. So but yeah, I agree with you. I think that behavior is because um like, and we can just give it away now since we've gone there. The thing was, it wasn't real. It was all a virtual reality program that he had kidnapped her, forced her into, because when I was like, she was a whole ass doctor,
Yes.
like had a career
Had
and
friends.
had friends, had a life. And you know what? Even though it was kind of glimpsed at, so whenever he first lost his job, and you understand that he was feeling a little insecure, he felt bad about losing his job. Whatever his job was, he made good money. He was an engineer, he was something, whether he also worked at the hospital, it was something. Okay. And you kind of got the idea, at least I did, that they were just starting out. She was new, she was a new doctor, but she was like, it's okay. I can take on more shifts until you find something. It's not a big deal. At that point, I'm thinking she was a waitress. I'm
Mhm.
still thinking that they're in the 50s, 60s, whatever, and she's a waitress. Okay, again, not every life was this utopian Donna Reed housewife show, you know? Um, and I think that's the thing, that a lot of these men have this whole beaver cleaver, leave it to beaver type thing, where they don't realize that, you know, um, that women did work, single mothers did exist during that time, especially in minority communities. So, but I was thinking, okay, so he lost his job. Because, and the reason I say that is because if you look at the background, it was really light and bright. Like they were somewhere with a lot of light coming into the room. Kind of breezy, kind of airy. Things were really good. But then the next time when we get a picture of what their real life was like, everything was so dark, especially once she left the hospital. It's like, oh shit, she's a doctor. Okay. So she was a doctor. And then when she gets home, and the way he looks, just the way his transformation. Um, in the first clip where she was telling him, "It's okay, you lost your job. We'll find another one. It's fine." He looked healthy and young and still attractive. Then the next time we see him, when she's coming home from the hospital, and he's like, "I haven't eaten yet," and I'm like, "Well, motherfucker, why didn't you?" That was where my brain went. It was like,
Why
"What
didn't you
the
eat? That ain't my
yeah."
problem.
Like, she's a whole ass doctor working 30-hour shifts trying to support y'all, and you talking about you late. I haven't eaten yet. And then he tries to, and she's like, "Well, why haven't you eaten?" And he's like, "Well, you never answer." Mother, she's a doctor. She's in surgery. What do you mean she never answers your calls? And so, and you could tell that by then the marriage had just soured so much just because it didn't even seem like he was trying to get a job. He was just so obsessed with that podcast and that whole wanting to blame everything and everyone else for his problems, and him resenting her because she had a life and all of that. And so I was like, okay. So then I'm thinking, and I'm still trying to make the connection, like how I'm still not thinking that that victory was not real in the sense that it was virtual. I'm thinking, okay, so how and when does he kidnap her and get her to go to victory? How does he convince her of this? And yeah,
Well, I feel like that scene that you talk about when she gets home after, her like 30-hour shift, and he says, "I haven't eaten yet." I felt like at that point he had been completely brainwashed by listening to that podcast, right? So looking for a job, you kind of see some kind of advertisement or something like that saying, "Are you down on your luck? Do whatever they words, keywords that they use to get the attention of people who are in a bad place in their life at the moment." And so he was listening to that every single day, because I listened to what Chris Pine's character was saying right before she came in. And then when she walked, it was along the lines of what your wife should be doing, how she should be taking care of you. So when he came in, he was just like, "I haven't eaten." It was kind of like her responding that way was confirming what he now knew, that she was supposed to take care of him, and she wasn't taking care of him because she had to work so much and she was unhappy. And when she found when they were arguing, and she said, "I was happy, I had my career." And I was just like, he made a choice that because he was unhappy with how things were and what the podcast said his life should look like, then he automatically assumed, because she was working so much, that she had to also be unhappy with her life and the fact that she had to work so much, not taking into consideration that she loved being a doctor and that's what she signed up for. So she already knew what was coming, what her life was going to be like her putting in that time. um so yeah, like I was just like, goodness gracious, like weak-minded. Like that's all I kept thinking is, how, there's a lot of weak-minded, and I'm saying this because of the concept of the movie. There are a lot of weak-minded men who fall into the trap of these ideas. Just because you see a successful woman does not mean you are less than. And we have been raised to automatically feel that way, right? Like we're automatically saying like, "Hey, you have to work really, really hard and you should be proud of your accomplishments." While it's kind of like we're sometimes society is teaching boys that you're supposed to be taking care of the wife. So if she has a more successful job or she makes more money than you, then there's something wrong. And she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, because she's supposed to take care of you. Like she's supposed to treat you like a king, you know? And I was just like, goodness gracious. I was like, that was just so horrible what he did to her. Like,
but I think it's also, and I agree with you. I do think she was unhappy. I think not with her life in general. I think she was unhappy in the marriage because of just how stressful and complicated everything had become. Like Mug, she just worked 30 hours, and then you tell her she's hungry, so she's about to come in to avoid this fight with you, try to find you something to eat, and the first thing you want to do is jump on her. There's no hot water, so she's like, I need to take a shower. It's like the last thing she's feeling at that moment is sexy. You've been home all day and the place looks like that, and I'm like, damn. So I'm getting, just because of the way the apartment looks, I'm getting one or two things. She they live in an East Coast city where it's really expensive, like Philadelphia, Boston, although that could be anywhere. And since it's just one income, even though she's a doctor and she's supporting them, or they're living below their means because she doesn't want to make him feel worse. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, but yet she was so I from that aspect of I think she was happy with her career because the hospital scene was a little brighter. But I think it was when she was going home, when she had to go home and deal with that and try to placate him. And it's like at that point, it seems like he had given up. And you were right, he was just so brainwashed, um, and gaslit. Like he had been like whatever Chris Pine's character had gaslit him so much, that that's where his whole mindset is. Believing that that's the way to go. That it was her fault for being educated. That he was less than a man. Somehow it was her fault that he lost his job. I'm like, just that. Oh well, if I can be the man, and I think, like I have friends who I've talked about this with, um, that one is an executive, at an oil company, and it's like when she was dating men, I'm like, they know what you do when they start dating you, but all of a sudden in a relationship it becomes a problem. Like, it's not a problem for her, it's a problem for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, but how is that her fault that she has a career where she's making more than you? You knew that from the beginning. So what do you want her to do? Like all of a sudden her house was too big or her car was too nice or she did too much. And it's like, because you like, so I think men have that insecurity, and they think that taking care of someone only means financially. Like as long as I can give you the money and quote unquote take care of your physical needs, then fuck the emotional and the mental. Like that's what they do. They take care of your money, they provide for you financially, and they fuck you. So as long as they got the money and they dicking you down, then all's good. Forget everything else.
Yeah, that's how they kind of, but that's kind of how they're taught. So I think the show definitely opens up that conversation, if people are really watching it, for the message that is really presenting on, having the conversation on the danger of that kind of mindset, um, of thinking that the 1950s is what you want to go back to, when women kind of just suffered through a lot of times. For somebody to think that women were just okay with that kind of life, majority of them were not. It's just like when people talk about, oh well, the divorce rate is higher than what it was when my grandparents were married. Yeah, at the same time, no matter what happened to your grandmother, she never thought to divorce your grandfather, because she didn't know what her life would be like and what kind of life of poverty she would be in with her children if she actually left the man who brought home the bacon. So it's a different mindset as well, where women were less likely to divorce. That don't mean crap was happening and they didn't want to divorce their husbands. It's just you just kind of suffered through everything that happened. I have so many friends whose grandparents, whose grandmothers were cheated on repeatedly, who had to suffer through their husbands having children outside of their marriage and everything like that. And they just never divorced them. And they were like, well, they stuck it out. Why? Why do they have to stick it out? And I felt like this show kind of shows that, where like the 1950s of a man is a man. And I'm like, somebody please define to me, what is a man? Like, how do you define a man? by society standards. So I
And
can know exactly what not to look for
thank you.
when I'm looking for one, you know?
And what being the head of the household looks like. Like
Yeah.
it's funny. It's really amazing to me. And I think you hit the nail on the head how they chose to go back to the 1950s. That was the time that they went back to. And they had this idealized, like I was thinking, because the whole time I was thinking, and I don't know if you've ever seen the show on Nick at Night when it came on or the reruns, but I used to be obsessed with the Donna Reed show. Not because of what it was, but because Donna Reed was one of the first female writers, producers, directors on TV. She wasn't credited because of the time, but that was her show through and through. It didn't just bear her name. Um, and the same as Lucille Ball. So it didn't just bear her name in the sense that, hey, she's the star of the show. No, she was a writer, director, producer on that show and during that time. So that, the history, the nerd in me was coming out. So I used to be obsessed with that show, but it still played into a lot of those same archetypes. For the longest time, I was like, why the hell do they have two beds? Like, and then I was thinking, well, how do they make babies if they have two beds? You
They
know?
push them together.
Yeah. So I'm just like, that's a lot. And then I'm thinking, there's no way they getting it in them twin beds. Do they push them together? And then I'm thinking, that's a lot. What do they say? Whose bed? Yours or mine? And so and then when he came home and he had dessert before he had dinner, I'm thinking, well, that's a little risque for the 50s. At least they're showing that they were still sexual, because you get this whole idea that you weren't sexual, and it goes back to that whole thing that we're going back to now, that sex is just for procreation. You're not supposed to enjoy it, especially if you're a woman. Men can enjoy it, but women cannot. you know um and if you did enjoy it, that whole argument, the reason they don't want to make exceptions and different things for rape and incest is because the only way you're going to get pregnant through that is if you enjoyed it you know
Oh,
um
society.
yeah, so that's why I was like, this movie,
Dark.
it dark and
It was so
scary.
dark.
Dark and scary when you think that we could be on the precipice of returning back to a lot of this shit. And as a woman and as a minority woman, that scares the fuck out of me. Like, really. I was like, well, damn, this is the perfect horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is a real life horror movie. Um, so I now one of the things I actually had a problem with the movie is I hated the ambiguous ending. I would have loved it if she would have figured out what was going on sooner, and you kind of had the movie take place in the VR, and then the other half, once she figured it out and got out, with her trying to take them down and free the other women. So I would have loved to seen how the juxtaposition between her navigating both worlds would have worked. Um, Not to make it too much, but just I would have loved if they could have found a common ground or a middle ground for that. I think, like I said, the ambiguity of it didn't work, or if it would have been more about her and Margaret trying to escape, or more of them trying to figure out what was going on. So I don't know. Somehow the payoff didn't quite work for me, but I got it. Does that make sense? You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, this isn't Inception where you can have an ambiguous ending like that and it'd be a conversation piece. It's like this movie needed a clear cut ending. I think we as an audience deserved more closure than we got. What about you?
I think I at first when it first happened, I was like, oh my God, we're not gonna see like when she wakes up. And then I was just like, no, that's good. Because it keeps us wondering. Like, because when they said they knew exactly where she was. So then I start thinking, like, when she woke up, were there people already waiting for her? Like, like just certain like thoughts started coming into my head. So it's not knowing for sure kind of leaves the door open to figuring it out on your own. Like, what do you think would have happened? um would she have gotten away? Would she have been killed? Because they knew where her body was, so they could have killed her. So I think that I was okay with the ending once like I really like started to think about it, and I was just like, huh, okay. I was like, I didn't necessarily need a clear cut ending. I didn't. It's kind of like up to your imagination what you think happened after she made it. You
Yeah,
know, did she live or did she die?
and part of me was, and initially part of me was okay with that, but then the more I got into it, the more I start thinking about it. I'm like, no, I really think it would have served better if you could have seen like a best of both worlds situation. How does she ultimately kind of escape that and take them down? Was she able to like, I think, and I guess that's more what I wanted, is to see more of how she navigated both worlds a little bit more. And if the ambiguity had come somewhere between her not being able to take them down, or her, just escaping, having to leave wherever they were, then I think I would have been okay with that. But I was like, nah, it was a little too ambiguous. Um, and I think maybe they spent a little bit too much time in the VR world. Like once you figured it out, it's like, oh, okay,
But that was the whole concept of it. Like it
I
wasn't,
get it.
it was nothing to do with the real world. It was
I
about,
get that.
because then when you get to Olivia Wilde's character and to know that she chose this and she was there, on her own volition, like on her own, she chose to go into this world. So that's why she bought into it more than any, of the other wives did. Because she was a willing participant in that world, and so I think that all of that just plays into it on just how they each reacted differently. Even the newest wife, Violet, even like, with the newest wife, like just how they each reacted differently, and how, as the wives started to think, how you saw the world breaking down and the husbands just getting all crazy as their wives started to like pause. It's like, yeah, this don't seem right. And you just like, I was waiting for like kind of like a Truman thing where all of a sudden like you would slowly see the world, the VR world disappearing.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that's what I guess that's what I mean by payoff. Like the
Mhm.
ending needed a bigger payoff. If it was a revolt of all the wives in in the VR world, that would have been great. And then you see them waking up in a room, or you just see them waking up, and that ambiguity. But I think it was too ambiguous, excuse me, where you didn't know what happened in either place. And so that to me was a problem, because at first you're thinking when she's standing there, it's like, okay, it's starting to click. So are you going to see the wives all of a sudden have this reaction to what is going on? How is this one person waking up having this much of effect? Yeah, the men are freaking out about it, because most of the men, you can gather that most of their wives are not in on it. Olivia Wilde was a different character. And what does it say about her psychologically if your kids still don't want to be with you, even in a recreated VR world? Was that your guilt or whatever for what happened to them? Did you lose them in custody battle? Did they die? But even in the VR world, it was still like there was still this shift between her and her kids, like this chasm. So that was just something different. But so I was like, okay, so what is happening here or there? Why was this one person getting out? So why was it so world ending, I guess? Like, were you afraid when she got out? So, and then that goes back to answer your question. Okay, so I'm with you. If you did have people, like when they said they know where you are, they're going to kill you in the real world, you have to go. So if they already knew where she was, then someone should be there when she wakes up. Because, and I agree with you, because it goes back to that whole electroshock therapy thing. I'm thinking that shit happened in the real world. Like they didn't shock her body in the VR. Like the electroshock was taking place in the real world.
Yep.
And so it's just like, so that ambiguity, like there was, and I guess that's just the writer in me or whatever. Like when I start breaking down stuff too much. So I have to be careful when I watch stuff or when I go to the movies. I have to make sure I'm there just as a fan. And then after the movie, the more I start thinking about it, that's when the whole analytical part comes in. I'm like, well, how could you have possibly done that differently? But those are just the questions that I had. I still say though that we needed a more clear cut ending in one of the two worlds. Either we see the whole VR world break apart, fall apart, and then when you hear her take the breath at the end, and it goes black, that's fine. Or the VR world stays together and we see her wake up and someone is there waiting for her. She thinks she gets away and they're waiting for her or something like that. So to have the ending of both worlds be so ambiguous, told y'all I was tongue tied today. To be so ambiguous, that part did not work for me. Um, okay. So what did you think about Harry Styles' acting before we wrap this up? That was one of the big things that we both said. Do you think it's getting better?
Um, at first it was a little slow. I think he's done better than what I've seen him do previously. So I think he is slowly honing the craft of acting. The one issue that I had about it was that he does not know how to control his accent, and you saw it throughout the whole movie. Like he flipped, even when he went like it was at one point where I went to the movies with some of my friends, and it was at one point where I like looked at her and I was just like, was that an American accent? And she was just like, I know, right? And then all of a sudden, like the next scene, wait, is he British in the movie? Like, and she was just like, yeah, I think he's British. Like, yeah, I think he's. And then even with his British accent, you heard when his real accent, because he has a very, very thick accent. Um, you heard when his real British accent came out, and then when he was honing it to kind of, and I call this the Benedict Cumberbatch accent. When like you're honing it in for people who grew up like in the upper class of London society or something like that very refined English accent.
He doesn't have that Cockney accent.
Yeah, that's what it was, a Cockney accent. Because Harry Styles does, like, he has a very, very thick British accent, and so he flipped a lot between the different accents. Like, he couldn't figure out which one he is, and the more into his acting he got, the more his accent started to come out. He couldn't keep up that refined British accent that he was trying for in the role that he was playing. So that was the one thing. But other than that, like, I thought that one of the most powerful scenes was when they were going off on each other and he was yelling. And I felt that, like, I was just like, wow. Like, I was like, I think that's the best that I've ever seen him so far since he started acting. So I do think that he has gotten way better. In his, now granted he hasn't had that many roles, but he's definitely gotten better from what I've seen when he first like kind of dipped his toe into the water of acting. So I can't wait to see how he continues to progress, but he does need to hone in on the accent when he is playing a role in the movies.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I agree. I did notice the flipping, but I think the one part that kind of explained it, when and it was really quick. Um, but when they were talking about his profile, they were like, he's American, but he wants to be British. And so I think that kind of explains the flipping of the accents, because I'm like, that's so weird. One moment he's British, and the next minute he's American. And I didn't really notice. I noticed the accent flips, and I'm like, what the fuck? But then when they were talking about his profile building, I'm like, okay, well, that explains why he can't constantly keep up with the British accent. I didn't. Now, I'm not as attuned to Harry Styles when he speaks it that way, so I didn't notice the heavier, more Cockney accent. But I did notice him flipping back and forth, so I was like, okay, so that kind of explained it. But yeah, I agree with you. He has gotten better. I think the scene where they're arguing, where she finds out the truth, I think that is probably one of his most powerful scenes and probably one of his best. Um, Okay, before we end this, did you think the controversy helped or hurt the movie?
I don't think it played any role in it. What do you mean by hurt or help the movie?
Um,
Like people going to see it, or like the
People
movie in
going to see
general?
it, the reviews. I know it didn't have anything to do with the movie in general, because you couldn't tell that Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde hated each other. Although they said that happened more towards the end of filming, so you couldn't really tell that. So as far as them being professional and everyone playing their part, yes. But I'm talking about the press? Do you think the outside press from all the controversy? Do you think it affected the reviews and maybe the box office? People going to see the movie.
Well, yeah, of course. Like we said, bad publicity helps you just as much as good publicity. So people kind of wanting to go see the movie just to see, like, hey, did it play out in the movie, or like did they stick it to their roles, kind of thing. um it pushed people to the theater because people love drama. So I definitely think it did push some people to the theater. It made me want to see it even more. Like, I wanted to see it from the jump, but it definitely was like, okay, I definitely want to go see this. And then when my friends was just like, hey, we want to go see the Harry Styles movie, and I was just like, okay, cool, because I wanted to go see that too. But I'll be honest, like, if they hadn't like said something, I don't know if I would have went opening weekend. Like, I don't know if I would have went opening weekend if they hadn't like said like that's what they want. Like, I wouldn't have rushed to the theater. So I think the drama definitely played a role in now wanting to go see it, to see did it play anything into their acting abilities with all the drama that was going on behind the scenes.
Okay. And I have one more question. So, with all the fallout, do you think that they have been fair or unfair to Olivia Wilde? And I ask that because, a lot of the think pieces, especially coming from men, are how this has ruined her career. Um, just the controversy surrounding the movie. And I'm like, okay, it's not the first time that a director has had started a relationship with a star of a movie, of one of their movies. It's not the first time a director has not gotten along with uh, some of the stars of their movie. So are they making a bigger deal out of this because she's a woman?
Probably, but
Okay.
she'll bounce back.
I agree, and that's the thing I was thinking about is we were talking about it, or, the unfairness of women, and it was something else, that I was watching. Rachel Nichols was talking, and we talked about that later, and we can talk about it in the rewind. But the one point that she made specifically is that how women are always expected to give up more than men, and we take when shit goes wrong, we take the brunt of it. So I was just like, are they being unfair to her? Not saying that shit wasn't shady, not saying she didn't do shady shit, but is she getting more bad? Is it doing more to tarnish her reputation because she is a woman and they hold us to such different standards than they hold to men? And then, you on the flip side of that, you say, oh well, okay, she should have shown solidarity with Florence Pugh, and then Florence Pugh should have shown solidarity to her and should have just taken it, or should have just showed up because it's a woman. And I'm like, no, I see both sides of it. On one hand, I think some of the treatment is unfair and harsher, and the criticism is harsher on her because Olivia Wilde is a woman. But no, I don't think Florence Pugh should have automatically just shut up and taken the bullshit because Olivia Wilde is a woman. I don't have a problem with Florence Pugh speaking out
Olivia
or
Wilde brought it on herself.
not
Let's
speaking
just
out.
say that she brought it
Exactly.
on herself. She was a bitch, and she threw Florence Pugh under the bus, and then she was called out for it. And unlike some other actors that would kind of just like go with the flow, Florence Pugh was like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't need you. Like, it's kind of like knowing her worth. And it's like, I don't need you to make a name for myself. I already have a name. So you look bad in this. So she's gonna go about her life. Olivia Wilde does look bad. And I think the worst thing is the fact that when this happens to men, men don't get dragged the same way women do. But
Exactly.
I'm not saying she shouldn't have gotten dragged. It's justified that she was dragged for all that she did in the behind the scenes drama. She should get dragged for that. It's just sad that men don't get dragged. So we can have that conversation about the fact that men don't get dragged for doing the same thing, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Olivia Wilde, like, it was right in her getting dragged for all the drama that she created behind the scenes of her own movie set.
Exactly. And that's where I was going so unclearly with that. So thank you. But I agree with you. And like I said, I two things can be true. Does she deserve the smoke? Yes. Okay. She managed the movie horribly. from my understanding. And it's not just Florence Pugh saying that, in some cases, actions speak louder than words. Chris Pine bailed out after Khan on all the promotion for the movie. Other people are coming up from behind the scenes who worked on the film saying that, yeah, it was bad and stuff like that. So,
What does that make
but
Harry Styles? Because they're still together, aren't they? Or no?
yeah,
See, and
I
that's
think
that's
so.
my other thing is that I'm gonna be honest. It also makes me look at Harry a little bit different. Like it just it tarnishes the image that I have of him just a little bit on the fact that you like he's not getting the brunt of it, but you had to see the drama that was being played behind the scenes and how you were in the middle of that drama because y'all just fell into lust with each other and was just going at it. And he's not a child. Uh, so I just think like it also tarnished him, but I guess that plays into what I said before on he doesn't get any of the pushback while Olivia Wilde is going to have to live with getting all of the pushback for everything that happened on set.
Yeah, and if it was a different, and if it was Harry Styles, the director, and Olivia Wilde, the ingenue or the star, one of the stars who he started up a relationship with, somehow the distractions and all that, they would find a way to blame that, put that at her feet.
Mm-hmm.
That it was her fault. So that's the only thing I'm getting at. It's kind of like the whole thing with the Boston Celtics coach. Two things can be true. A lot of people like to say we live in a black and white world, and we don't. It's always 50 shades of gray to just about any situation. So I think that and ultimately, I don't want to see this ruin her career. The movie was not bad. I listed some of the issues I had with it, but I think for her second directing job, I think she did a pretty decent job. It wasn't a bad movie. So, and for all the behind the scenes drama, it was really one of those movies where you really couldn't tell it was just that much that fucking dysfunctional. So I appreciate it. If it hadn't been for all of this coming out, you would have never known that everything behind the movie was so fucked up. Um, all right, now, so before we end this, how many popcorns are you giving it?
So I'm gonna give Don't Worry Darling 3.75 popcorns. I did really, really enjoy the movie. I think like one of my only things that I had an issue with was because for some reason it was just very noticeable to me, was Harry Styles' accent. And him not being able to fully control the accent that his character was supposed to have, which kind of like threw me off because then I couldn't really figure out like some scenes of what he was trying to portray or whatever like that. But 3.75 popcorns. I thought it was very enjoyable and I would definitely recommend it to other people to go see it. What about you?
I'm gonna give it a 3.25. I was stuck between 3 and 3.25, but as we talked about it, I liked it a little bit more than I initially am. I will go with the higher ends, especially when I think about wouldn't it be so funny if Florence Pugh was nominated for an Oscar for this?
She won't be, but it'd be funny.
She won't be, but she might be, but I doubt it. There seem to be some other good stuff coming up, but that would be funny. But anyway, so 3.25, and that does it. Do you have anything else to add about Don't Worry, Darling? Are you worried?
No, I'm good.
Okay. That does it for this week's episode of the Popcorn Wind Down. Please be sure to listen, like, follow, and comment on wherever you stream your favorite podcast. You can also keep up to date on the latest in entertainment and pop culture news, as well as other amazing kernels of pop culture goodness at thepopcornwinddown.com. That's it. That's the plug. Poppy the pop, 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 pop. If I were a man, you would give me better sound effects.
That is the funniest shit that you have ever said. That was perfect timing.
I have my moments.
I'm sorry. I can't. Oh my God, tears are coming to my eyes.
All right. Well, thank you as always, and be sure to join us next week when we discuss The Bear. I'm excited. Have you finished watching it?
I have not.
I, I I'm interested to see what you'll think about it. And until next time, I'm Eddie.
And I'm Tammy. Bye.
Peace.